this virtual summit, which is beginning August 15th. And we have some incredible speakers, and one of them this year, and I know Mary Rockwood Lane. She has been a dynamo, and I had the honor and pleasure of interviewing her once before for The Creative Activist, the book. And I thought I would bring her back because she does some amazing work in the world, and I think you all need to hear from her. Mary is the co-founder and director of the Shands Arts and Medicine program at the University of Florida in Gainesville. She teaches creativity and spirituality in healthcare. She's currently working on an interdisciplinary end-of-life program and so much more. And so I'm just going to jump right in, and we'll talk with Mary. Hi, Mary.
Hi, how is everybody? I'm very excited to be on this summit. This is an exciting opportunity to reach out to as many people. And it sounds like you have an incredible group all together. I love it.
Well, it was a wonderful adventure for me, just reaching out to people that I wanted to interview and try and provide an array of people, teachers, visual artists, educators, visionaries, authors, filmmakers, so it's a little of everything. And that's what I loved about this, because everyone is using their personal story, their gifts and talents in service to making the world better. And this is an opportunity for, community leaders. That's who I want on this call is, church and synagogue leaders and religious leaders, community leaders, change agents, people, concerned citizens, because I know there is a world out there of people who say, I want to make the world better, I just don't know how, what can I do? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So why don't we just dive in for a minute and tell people a little bit about your backstory and the inspiration for the work you've been doing over the last, 20 years.
Well, I think my passion I discovered within myself when I was going through a really difficult time in my life, and everyone has, the highs and lows, and they go through periods of their life where they get to a point where I was at that point in my life, I was at the end of my rope, and I really didn't know how to express intense emotions that were not positive. I felt angry, I felt sad, I felt a tremendous amount of despair, and I really was not able to express myself. Well, when I went into the studio and I started making art and I started getting out canvases, I discovered such freedom in the most passionate, uninhibited way. I just started painting at the studio. I started doing self-portraits. I started using colors. It was just the most incredible experience for me, and it was this incredible release. It was a release of such authentic, pure, emotional expression that when I released it, I sort of became calm. I sort of moved through this personal transformation. I realized that I had such a powerful creative potential, and I was able to be resilient, and I was able to heal myself. And from that experience, I decided that I wanted to create an opportunity for artists in my community to come into the hospital setting and work with patients at the bedside, work with people who were dealing with physical crisis, emotional crisis, a change in their whole life, people who are diagnosed with breast cancer or cancer for the first time, and suddenly their life was turned upside down, and people were in where they were being treated physically, but how do we really reach out and help people process this experience and discover their purpose and discover their creative power? So we brought artists in, and it became the first artist in residence of its kind, and that happened in the 90s. And over the last couple, the last decades, I have gotten more and more in being involved in an activist in bringing art into many places in our community. One place I started was a hospital because I'm a nurse, and I was, I worked in a critical care unit, and I saw the need in healthcare. But now I'm sort of looking at other avenues, how we can bring arts into community that can create opportunity for people to be empowered and authentically express themselves. That's what I'm really interested in now. And
well, I love that. Let me just stop for 1 second, just because I want people to understand that you started painting without ever picking up a paintbrush before. It doesn't mean you have to be an artist, that you have to be trained. It is about really just digging deep into yourself and just finding a way to express yourself. And it could be in painting, it could be in sculpture, it could be through movement, writing a piece of music, anything. So I just wanted people to not have to have a background in art to do the work. And that is, it's empowering in itself. And so that was what I just wanted to interject. And
yes, because everyone's an artist, and some people don't know that. They don't know what it is they love and can do, and so they give themselves the opportunity to explore.
Right. It's about being it is about being on this journey, play and exploration and experimentation, and we can all find our voice. And I believe that in my heart, that we have an authentic voice, but we're so caught up in, we can't, we shouldn't, what will people think, I have nothing original to say, all those words. And so we stop ourselves from one of the most expansive, transformative gifts we can give ourselves.
So true. So true. Okay. And, everyone is an artist, and that's what we have to remember. That's my most powerful discovery in the work that I've done, is everyone is an artist. Everyone has gifts that they can tap into, many times that they don't even have any idea that they possess them. I never knew I could paint when I started to paint, never. And some people can make music. Some people can do dancing. It's like we don't give ourselves permission in our lifestyle to explore all these different mediums, and that's what we have to give ourselves permission to do.
And it may even be something that you don't consider an art, but it could be cooking. It's the way you present your food on the plate. It could be gardening.
Exactly.
There are so many avenues of creativity that we have denied ourselves as a culture, and people say, well, you can't make money at that. It's not worthwhile. That's frivolous. And unfortunately, the school systems have, shut down. It's the first thing that goes, So it reinforces that attitude. So, yeah. Okay,
and once you start making art, it starts flowing, whatever it is. Once you start doing it, it builds on itself, which is so powerful.
Right. I totally agree with you. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I thought that was a really important point to bring up for people who are listening, who are saying, but I'm not creative. We all are. So.
Oh, we all are.
We all are. So what I would love to talk about, we had a conversation a while back about some of the work you're bringing to the community with kids who are at risk. So if you want to talk about that a little bit, that'd be wonderful.
Well, I've gotten interested. I've been working in the arts and healthcare, and I was working with integrating art into students who are studying at school, who are looking at many different disciplines to how to be creative as a nurse or a medical student. But lately, I've gotten very interested in the population of at-risk youth and how we can bring and create programs in the school system, specifically kids who are in school who get disciplined, and we have a system that punishes them. And I've really become very interested in how we can use the arts as a way for these young people to find expression for the issues that they're dealing with, the issues of anger, the issues of depression, the issues of frustration, the issues of being in school and maybe not wanting to be in school. How can we create positive opportunities? So I'm very interested in looking at how we can get involved in these systems and bring the arts back in as an expression of these feelings, because so many people are struggling today. And how can we create a way in which people can truly express themselves and allow themselves to release some of the energy that gets pent up in our bodies? So it's like, how do we, there are techniques for
Okay,
Are you
if you
there?
want to share some of those techniques, and then let's talk about some of the challenges of shifting and getting into the school system, because you're at the beginning point.
I
And
am.
I think that's important for people to hear, because they may have a great idea, but how do you go about taking that idea in your head and making a reality out of it?
Well, what I'm doing, the ways of which is to remove, to tap into is I'm feeling that we create studios and we create programs where students, instead of being in detention, instead of, doing, punishing and being a punitive system, is there a way that we can create opportunities for students that would build their self-esteem, actually engage them in their creative life, whatever their creative life will be, and how do we bring these kind of programs into the schools? So what I've done, I'm in Gainesville, Florida. I've never done any of this work before. There's a Center for Peace Building here. So I gave them a call and I said, I would like to be involved in your training programs. I would like to find out what it is that's already happening. So I went to one of their programs. I did a workshop to find out what's already happening, and I was amazed. There's so much happening already. And they're really involved with restorative justice and how to deal with at-risk youth and meeting people in the community. And what you realize is there's so many people that you do not even know that, believe it or not, are interested in the same thing you are. It was amazing to me. I've been thinking about bringing these arts into the school systems for years, and I really didn't know how to even approach it. So I met with this workshop, and it turns out they know principals, they know teachers, I'm making connections. I'm, beginning to network and be in communication. And what I'm initially doing is listening to what is already happening in your community, who is doing what, and then you standing up and being in partnership with them, bringing your ideas and your skills to help solve the problem that the community is working on already. For example, I actually met with the chief of police, and I said, I understand, there's these huge population of adolescents who are getting arrested and going to jail. I would like to be involved in how I could help. I don't know what I can offer. I don't know how to begin to do it, but how can I help? He said, well, there's this group of people that are doing this kind of work. They're not doing exactly what you're talking about, but they're interested in creating programs for these adolescents. I said, perfect. Let me go meet them. So that's exactly what I did. I met with them, and I started talking to people. And the other thing that's important is that when you want to be a community activist and you want to make change, it's really important to be patient. That part of the energy and creating momentum is going out in the community and becoming part of what the network that's already happening and meeting people. The biggest breakthrough I had was at this workshop. There was a woman who was she was in charge of all the probation on all the students in my county. And I met her, and she was talking, and she did a presentation. And I said, I wanted to talk to you because I'm really interested in how I can be involved, where we could maybe look at, instead of a punitive program, would you be interested in exploring the possibility of bringing arts as a creative process and as a program where students would be able to engage in their creativity, and that would work with self-esteem and empowerment, getting them into art, dance, gardening, cooking. What are the possibilities of how we could create something like this? Her eyes lit up. She said, this is fantastic. I would love you to be able to help me create this. And I said, well, I would like to meet with you. And she says, there's already groups of people who are beginning, and we just got some financial grants, and we are exploring programs and what's going to be the most effective. And I said, I would like to meet with you and talk to you about it. So that was my first inroads. So, and I also know that this work is going to be something I want to be involved with, not just for a year, not just for 6 months, but I'm thinking I want to be involved in making this happen over the next 5 or 10 years. I know that sounds like a long time, but that's how I started the Arts and Medicine program. I knew for it to take hold, you need a vision that is going to be, that you're consistent about, you believe in, you're passionate about, and you can make it manifest. And it is, you will meet people along the way that will come and go and help you, but the most powerful standing creative energy that you have to work on, that you can count on, is your commitment, your passion, and your ability to stick with it. Does that make sense?
That. It does, because I think people, we're in a hurry, and I wish I could just say that change happens overnight, and in some cases and instances it can, but when you're talking about systemic change in a culture, it takes time, and you're dealing with lots of personalities and people, and what I love, I think, the most is this collaborative process, because you've come around to how can I work with other people versus let me create another nonprofit, let me do it alone. And I think we are all fighting for resources, and that I think we cannot be silos anymore, that we have to come together in community to address some of these issues. I had a really interesting conversation with Kurt Toughlin, who does Shakespeare in prisons. And he's been doing that for 20 years, and he started in Kentucky, and then he moved to Michigan, and now he's going to do a new one in San Diego. And it took years, to develop that and create the trust level and find the right people in the prison system who are also willing to work with him. And work with this image. And so it takes time. And you not necessarily, as an activist, a creative activist, you might have to go around several times and network till you find that one person who's really willing to buy into your vision. And I think, as you said, you need a very clear vision. And, I always believe in writing down a vision and really practicing it and spending time in front of the mirror, being able to tell anybody what is your vision so that they can clearly see what it is. And it may be you have to write it, maybe you do a painting. I don't know. For everybody's it's going to be different. But I think when you can articulate it and you have that passion, that you can connect with these other people and they will see it as well.
That is so true. And see, what's happening with me, which is really exciting for me and interesting, is I've always been in healthcare, and now I'm in a school system or a legal system, which is a whole different world. And now I'm sort of learning a new language. I'm learning a new perspective. I'm learning basically a different paradigm. And as I'm building skills to be able to be in a different world and learning, what their vision is, I'm able to figure out how I, as a healthcare provider, for example, can offer something. And one of the things I've learned in, the idea of bringing arts and creativity with at-risk youth, one of the things I was saying is, I'm very interested in, as a healthcare provider, I sort of have a sense that what's healthy behavior. And many of these behaviors that young adolescents exhibit that put them at risk is normal developmental behaviors. And instead of making them wrong, how can we take this lifespan and these expressions of themselves and make it right? We can make it right through art. We can make it right through dance. How can we create alternatives that redirect, like maybe destructive behavior and make damage to something that's creative, but even expresses the negativity. It's not like you want to take the true feeling of anger, frustration, and despair and make something creative with it that's constructive, that's positive, and that's healing. It's not that and it's a way, how can we create ways in which we can allow people to be really who they are, be dealing with what they're dealing with, honestly, and allow there to be safety in the expression of what they need to express in themselves. That's so important.
It was so beautiful the way you said that. I remember I was teaching a class to, social workers, outreach, who actually deal with youth. And it was interesting because I had them make volcanoes because I know they had a lot of anger and frustration and anxiety, but they're afraid to express it among their peers. Like they'd be weak, they don't want to even sound that way. And how can I feel that way if I'm trying to help people? And yet they all got into it. They loved it. And when their volcanoes exploded, they thought it was fabulous. And it's the same kind of thing. We need to give everybody those chances to show, I can explode and it's a safe way and I can share all my feelings and get it out. Or whether it was even pounding clay. I mean, I can't tell you. I said, come on, guys, you can really get into this, And it's like we don't allow ourselves to show what we think is bad emotions, but anger is a part of life and it can be generative and energizing if we allow it to be. So
positive. And when we engage in our anger and we use our anger to let it transform us, because sometimes anger, it's really, really, you need to experience it. If there's something in your life that's activated you, and how you move through that time in your life by learning to express it creatively, constructively, you can get past it. But if you
I know for myself, I hung a punching bag in the basement, and when I'd get angry, I would take a baseball bat and I'd beat it, and it was like, oh God, it's like, I know other people who take sponges and they wet them and throw them against the wall. I think we need to give people that opportunity to express their anger and frustration, and so it's a creative way rather than a destructive way for other people. We're not going out and shooting people. We're not, we're not picking fights, but it's a way we can personally, and I think that's what we're talking about. How can we, especially kids who are at risk, that pent-up anger, what do they do with it, in a constructive way? Yeah.
And your work that you're doing with, I'm very interested in what you're doing with the runaway and homeless youth. How can we take the arts and reach this community, and how can we create systems out there in the community where they are and where they're living to reach out to them in a way that, allows them to move back into a way of being with community, with themselves, and allowing them to be resilient. Because I had a very, very, very troubled adolescent, extremely troubled. And, when I think back on it, for some reason, when I was in high school, I don't remember what I did, but I was in the art studio all the time. It was like an open studio, and I would go in there and I would be working on my projects. And I remember it being open, and I just remember it being something that was an environment that was safe, and it saved me.
I love it.
Really,
it's sort of
powerful.
like I was talking to somebody recently, and it was sort of like you want a boys and girls club for adults, or at youth, where they can come in and have a space to come in and express themselves. In my vision, it was always it was like an old Victorian house, and every room was different. So one we'd have drums, and another we'd have a dance studio, and another you could have a recording studio, and then a painting and a sculpture, and so people could express themselves, come and go as they wanted. It has not
That's
come
a fabulous
yet.
idea.
Well, thank you. I just I have lots of these
ideas.
No, I haven't done anything with these. I have a lot of these ideas, and I have this other one that I think can come through organizing around the religious institutions and stuff too. It's or the schools. It's called a Healed Heart Project is what I call it, and I'd like to see people, take an idea. What is love? And have everybody start questioning come up with your own definition of love and create some kind of art project around it. And so you can have just a big heart, you can make notes, and just, come together. But then the idea is then to go out into community and then start asking somebody older, somebody younger, somebody of the opposite sex, another race or religion, what is your definition of love? How do you share love in the world? And all of a sudden you've got this conversation going, and there might be this aha moment that mine is not the only way. There is more.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd like people to come back, and that same child or, or whoever is doing it, it can be an adult, come back and create another art project, a poster about love from their conversations, and then create a town hall where everybody brings their artwork. And
this is fantastic.
Well, thank you. I love it. And
I love this. I'm going to do this in my class. I'm going to see if we're going to do it. This is great. This sounds like something that's really doable.
It is doable, and it becomes a community project and an outreach. And if they start talking to first responders and all of a sudden the police are not your enemy, it's a way to bring the police in the conversation today in a safe way, and I love that. And you can do it around peace. You can do it around respect. You can each month you can pick a different topic, and that's sort of how I see it. Even what's the conversation? What does safe look like? Because for every community it's going to be different. But I think it's a way to bring community together. And so I have these two ideas. These have been with me a long time, but it's like I would like other people. It's not ownership. It's like I'd love other people to be incorporated into their lives. And I think that's what creative activism is about, is how do we create social change, connect on different planes, and not own our ideas, because I don't, when we get into the ownership piece of it, we lose something. And I want to share this with the world, and anybody who wants to take this on, I'd be happy to help them and get it started. So I've written up this stuff along the way, and I have ideas. So
that's fantastic. Well, this is the beauty of it all. Is that why this summit is so important? It's really getting a collection of ideas. And what really is fabulous is they're like shooting stars. You send them out like shooting stars, and then people just get ideas, they get inspiration, and they go out and we start doing this, and it becomes a collective consciousness. When it's just amazing to me when you think a thought and when I think a thought, and the creative energy of a creative activism, it is real. We are coming together as a community. We are making the world better. Our intention is powerful. And as each person takes one action in their life in some way, however it manifests, it's going to make a huge difference. It just does. I've seen it. When I started the Arts and Medicine program, I could feel there were people. I had this vision. I said, there's people everywhere. I can feel them. We don't know each other. But we're all thinking the same thing, but we're all going to do it a little bit differently. And then it's going to rise. It's going to be like a garden that starts blossoming, and people are going to start seeing the art emerging all over this healthcare system. And as one exhibit happens, or one concert happens, or one dance happens, it had a ripple effect. There was no ownership. It was like it was alive. It was alive. It was happening almost by itself.
I know, and it was so interesting because then you got, all of a sudden other hospitals, you had Mayo's collecting art, and then you had Cleveland Clinic. They had 5,000 pieces of art and 2 full-time curators because there was one idea, and then people took it and changed, and healthcare in its best form has evolved. And then the research that came afterwards, knowing that it not only helped patients, when they were seeing art, they didn't have to take so much medication. Their pain level was reduced. They healed quicker, but it also affected the people, the caregivers. That was why I think people were so surprised that if you see beautiful art, as a caregiver, you're more generous. You make less mistakes, all those things. And that's what it is. When you say we go to this collective consciousness, and I think we have to recognize there is one, and I'm not sure everybody really understands that. They feel isolated and alone, and you're really not.
Oh, you're not. And I know that, one of the most important things that we all can get is when we step into our light and we step into our fullness and we step into our authentic expression of ourselves. Not only are we healing ourselves, but on another level, we are actually healing each other. We're healing the collective. We're healing the world. Because I believe when one person heals, it begins to heal the whole community. And one person at a time, becomes creative. One person at a time takes an action, and suddenly the whole world, in a very beautiful way, it's like a symphony, it begins to move, and it begins to transform. And it's truly powerful. And I know we're out there, like sometimes I think I'm going to out there and make something outside of myself different. But many times the work is, if you can just work on your own personal life, your own creative process, your own expression of healing yourself, you are contributing to the whole. So just beginning with yourself is the best place to begin, and it makes a huge difference.
Right. You said it
important.
perfectly. It is exactly that. It was like, okay, this woman speaks from her heart, and you speak for me in this moment that it is an inside job. If we want more love in our lives and in the world, then we have to be more loving to ourselves and to each other. And so many times we are not loving to ourselves. We're the first people to say, "Oh, that was terrible. What's wrong with you? I don't deserve this. I'm not good enough, smart enough, young or old enough." And we have put limitations rather than loving ourselves, because I do believe when we love ourselves enough, there is that tipping point in the world that we are going to spread more love, and that is what is going to heal the communities around us.
And the inner critic, whether you realize it or whether we realize it or not, when this inner critic comes out, it's a painful process for ourselves. We're comparing ourselves. We're belittling ourselves. We think we're not good enough. We think our creative, what we do isn't perfect just the way it is. But the truth is, as a human being, as a creative human being, each person's expression of themselves is perfect. It's exactly, just like every tree in the forest is different. It's unique. It struggles. But all the trees, they're perfect. You can't sort of criticize them all. They're just like beautiful trees. They all have their own sense of being. And we as human beings have our own sense of being. And I really believe that when we make art, when we create a garden, when we write a poem, it's as if you have given yourself a gift. This is a gift from your own self that you give yourself. That is like, to me, when I started making art, I had no idea. I was like, wow. Or I write a poem and I read it and I'm like, wow. I
know. It's like that evolved out of me. I truly get that. It's like there's some days you say, I can't believe I wrote that, and that's when I also feel like I am really in that expansive state and open to infinite intelligence, to source, to God, whatever you want to call that, and that there is this, that I am guided and inspired, and I allow that to come through. And that was not always easy, because there was this, I was very disconnected from that space in my life, and that has evolved over time to recognize, own it, and accept that's a big part of me. I didn't ever want to talk about my struggles with finding my spirituality, because I was angry at God or whatever. But I think for me, it was a big part of my healing on an individual level, and being able to, even this idea just came out of, I want to say came out of the blue. It came from infinite intelligence. To know that I want to connect 1 million creative activists is an evolution of my whole life experience. And I didn't know how this was going to happen. After I wrote The Creative Activist, it was like, okay, now what? I don't know how to take that next step, just like you evolving from the healthcare into, working with kids who are at risk. I mean, there is an evolution when we are open to it. And I have a question for you. You had a very clear vision when you were working with the healthcare system. You worked? Do you have one yet for working with the kids? Do you know what that is yet?
What I am doing, I have a program that I've been working on. I teach this course. I created the Arts and Medicine program. I knew clearly I wanted to bring artists from the community at the bedside and have them work with patients. And it was creating a system of bringing people in. What my thoughts are is I am currently working on a free online course, which is for the University of Florida has a platform. It's called Coursera, and it's free for global students all over the world. So what I'm thinking is I want to develop a 6-week free program that is engaging, that students can do online. And I'm interested in creating and bringing it into communities where there would be support for students to engage with the course, but also at the same time have a support system in the school system. For example, if I'm just making this up, I have no idea, but let's say I met with the probation officers here in Gainesville and I said, could one of the interventions be they would do an online course, a 6-week or 12-week online course where they would engage in a project, they would make art, it would be something that they could make any kind of art they want, and they would engage in their community, which would be their school system. They could make murals, they could do poetry, they could do dance, they could build a garden. Their ideas are endless. And part of what they do as part of their probation, instead of being punished, they engage in this kind of program that engages them with the community in a positive way based on their own creativity. Is this possible? And then they would get a certificate at the end of this online course. They'd bring it back to you, and it would fulfill some of the requirements that you're asking them to fulfill to get off of probation. Now,
I love that. I love it.
I have no idea if it works, but that's an idea.
Well, it's really interesting. There was, I think it was a study by Points of Light, and they had students who were at risk, who were the recidivism, they were always truant at school. They actually made them mentors and tutors for younger kids. And they found after so many weeks of doing that they attended school more regularly because for the first time they actually had a job that they felt engaged them in the community, that made them feel important, that there was actually something real for them to do. And so I totally doable. I see this. I can see this for you. I'm really excited. I think this is going to be fabulous. And there's somebody else that I'd love for you to talk to is Lori Marshall. And she's one of our creative activists. She's a teacher, and she has created something called the Singing Tree Mural. She's done them all over the world and created them in communities where she's actually had 1,500 people working on one mural at a time. And it becomes and it's very cool because it's based on what's going on in the community. So one of them was, the theme that the kids came up with is, how can I stay out of jail and, still be healthy and not be on drugs and do something wonderful? What were the images that came through? Yes. So again, this is why I'm having this summit, because I can share an idea. You're going to connect with her, and she's got this whole thing outlined, and she's gotten, and she's been doing this for quite a while, and she's looking for different areas to do these programs and finding the right people to collaborate with so it gets done. So, yes, I love this. This is exactly why and it's for us as creatives as well as for community leaders to hear what's worked somewhere else. Okay, so we're starting to run out of time. So I do want to ask you a couple of questions, though, that we haven't covered yet. How do you think we can move people in positions let's say that in the school systems where they've been resistant or apathetic to this, how can we move them to action? What would that look like to you, so that we can get them to start seeing that there's other ways?
I think the most important thing, and the way my strategy would be, is to actually make personal contact and communication and have conversations. I think we have to see it as a collaborative action project, to where we have to find the people, meet as many people as possible and talk to them about the vision, present solutions that they can implement, and also get enough information to see what is holding people back, so we can think about developing an understanding of what is keeping people where they're at, why they're disillusioned, why they're not taking action, and then think about how we can maybe provide solutions creatively. So it's, to me, building partnerships. And the way you do that, you don't have any idea who your partners are going to be before you start networking. You don't know who they are going to be, but they emerge. Like when I started in the hospital, I would do a workshop I would go in and talk to like 25 people. And after I talked to 25 people, there would be one or two people that it was like, yes, I want to help you. These are my resources. And we could be a team. We could be a partner. What can I do? And the truth is, the more people you reach out to, the more people you will touch. Now, you may not in that moment have like a reaction from that person, but I do believe, and this is where my magical thinking comes in, I believe when you give voice to your vision, you give voice to an action, a plan of action you want to do to the world, that voice manifests the reality. And that if someone is not ready to hear what you're saying, that's okay. You've given them enough information that when something happens in the future, they may go, oh, I get it. This might be what they were talking about if they didn't understand it at the moment. So to me, your good intention of reaching as many people as possible is so important, and giving voice to the work that you want to do.
Love that. So on a personal note, I know you've written books, you're an author, again, you paint. What do you do? Because I've been trying to give people tips and tools and techniques to break through creative blocks. So what are some that you could share?
A creative block, okay. I think to me, one of the most important things I do is when I get into a creative block, whether it's a painting or writing, I go, okay, I may be taking this too seriously, I'm trying too hard, and I'm shutting down. What can I do that's almost like something that's more fun, more enjoyable, that lets me relax and lets me play? One of the things I do is I get a lot of my openness going for long walks on the beach. It's just something I love. It's a place where I decide, it's like the wind blows everything away from me. I let everything go away to where it's almost like still and it's empty. And then sometimes in that emptiness, something starts to emerge. And I think if you're struggling and it's painful, what is it that you can do that makes your life fun and light and not take it so seriously? Whatever it is, whether it's running, whether it's dancing, whether it's just talking, being in conversation. How do you creatively, let yourself explore in a more fun, less stressed out way to come back to your inspiration? And I think that's really, really important, and to try new and unfamiliar things. I love that because it always shifts my perspective when I do something I've never done before. I go, okay, I'm going to try to do something new that I've never done before, and that can be hard. So therefore, when you fall back on what you're familiar with, it's like you're renourished, and you're like, I can do that. That's one of the things that I do.
I love it. Okay. So how can people get a hold of you?
Oh, I have a website. I have two websites. Well, the easy way to get a hold of me is MaryRockwoodLane@gmail. I'm accessible on Gmail. And, if you Google me, Mary Rockwood Lane, I come up, and my website, Healing with the Arts, comes up. And I'm very excited because I'm putting this online course. It's going to be up in the fall. So you can get, there are many ways to get a hold of me, and I'm very open. If you email me and you want to have a conversation with me or talk to me, I have the same mission as you do. I realize, your mission is to engage and educate and empower people to be artists and creative artists. That's my mission too. So anything I can do that helps inspire someone to do what they want to do in the world, to me, that's why I'm alive, and that's why I'm here, and that's what I'm here to do.
Thank you, Mary. I so appreciate it. We can probably talk another hour. It'd be easy. But
sure.
I promised everybody a limit on the phone calls. So I want to say thank you to all our listeners. This material is so rich. There were so many great ideas that Mary talked about. And she's wonderful because she's been through the process of starting something new, creating something from scratch, and she's sharing her ideas with you. So if you have this great idea you want to do something different in your community, as she said, she'll reach out. But I'd love for you to take notes. think about what are 3 things that you learned today from Mary that you might apply to your own life, and make a commitment to do at least one of them. And it could be a baby step. Nobody says you have to go out and start a nonprofit. What is one thing? We even talked about just being creative in our own lives. How can you be more creative today? Because that will be changing lives as well. So again, this is Ray Luskin of The Creative Activist, and thank you for being here, and thank you, Mary, for participating.
Thank you. Yes, and the best for everyone, and may they follow their dreams and their bliss and become the creative activist.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.